our past webinars and CRM user group videos. Okay, so I'm not sure if anybody attended the previous webinar, but I just wanted to open it up and see if there were any questions specifically about anything that we covered in those calls. And if not, then I'll go ahead and move on to something else.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
Yeah, no, that was a really helpful video. Whenever you're looking for missing information, do you recommend that the technique of filtering for blanks and then pulling those into separate pages within the spreadsheet so that you can organize them in a way that you find out which in each page will represent kind of a column that's missing, and then you'll fill that in and then copy the whole column back into the original? Is that kind of the technique that you recommend?
Well, when it comes to processing data, generally, I would encourage you to do whatever makes you feel most comfortable. The way that I work is I typically create a filter for all of my columns on one worksheet, and then I'll filter the blanks, and then I'll just process the data within that worksheet. There are times where I do copy out data and do cleanup in a different tab. However, generally I try to, my end result is to get it all into one spot.
So you'll just filter it and then fill in all those blanks at once, then filter the next column, fill in all those blanks, and then it stays in the same place.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Did we have any other questions about anything we may have covered in the last two webinars? All right. Well, in that case, I'm going to go ahead and switch back to sharing my screen. We did have one question in the last webinar about how to import data as yourself rather than relying on Cosential to import it. But before I show everyone how to do that, I wanted to go ahead and explain that it could be very dangerous to import data yourself if you're kind of new to it and you don't really understand the process or what you might be importing. So with that, it's always safer to go to the support center, and I may actually go to this one over here so I can pull it up because we're in our demo account, and download their import template, and then upload it to support center and let them process the data for you. That is always a safe bet. And then once it's processed, you can have your report to compare the data to make sure that everything was pulled in correctly. So I'll go ahead. I just clicked on the support center, which you can get to from the sidebar here. And just to recap, if you are looking for those import templates, the easiest way to do it is there's a search bar here. And you can type in the word import and then search. And it should be one of the first ones that pops up, how to import mass update data. So typically when you use these attached templates here, they're spreadsheets, you either do them at the beginning of your implementation of your Cosential system, or if you're adding data or cleaning up data to a system that's already been implemented. And they're based on the different modules. So you have company contacts, company opportunities and leads, personnel, and projects. And I'm just going to click on one to download just to demonstrate what it might look like. So this is just dummy data that we're going to use shortly as soon as my template opens. It opens. Let's try that again. There it goes. It was just thinking for a second. All right. So when you download these templates, you'll notice that they're thinking again. You'll notice that there are columns that are highlighted in red, as well as headers that are in yellow. And those are your instructions. The columns that are in red are going to be your required fields. And you'll have to have a plan to fill those fields in with the data. Hopefully you have it because it is required. And there's also instructions in the yellow headers above. And some of these up here in the yellow might be required. It depends on what's next to it. They could be conditionally required, meaning that if one column has some data in it, then you'll have to complete, one of these other columns as well. So with that said, any questions so far? All right. Now, whenever you fill out this data import template, you would submit it through the support center the same way that you downloaded. So if you are going to support it, you go to support center. And then you would go up here to submit a request. And then from there, you would select data, import, cleanup, and then you would fill out all of the required fields that pop up here. It usually takes Cosential a week or two to turn it around. They'll let you know, hey, you have a week to review it, please review it. You want to compare what came in to what you submitted to make sure everything came across correctly, because that's not always the case. So definitely want to check what's been uploaded. Now onto the fun stuff. So during our call for the webinar earlier this week, there was a question about how to import data yourself. And again, I want to caution that if you aren't sure or confident in what you're doing, to avoid this unless, avoid this and instead use the data import through the support center. So there is on the sidebar here called marketing, and it would not be accessible to everybody necessarily depending on your settings. But if you are the OFA, you will be able to see this. And you have the option to import contact. And if you go to the marketing sidebar here, you can actually import your contacts and companies. It won't let you import data from your other modules. So this is just for contacts and companies. And the way that you would do that is you would go to add contacts. And there is another template here that is slightly different from the one that you're going to find in Support Center, which I'm in the demo account, so it's not going to work. But you could download it here. It would be more of a plain spreadsheet whenever you do download it. So whenever you're ready for import, you're going to create your mailing list, which is a way that you can actually track to see what is being imported. So you want maybe to call it CKC demo import, and then I will do today's date, 03/11/21. And then from there, we will, so there are, what this is down here is the deduping method. So what this is saying is if you are making an update to existing contacts or companies in the system, you will need to provide the backend IDs for both of those. And you need to tell Cosential, here is what we're using to make sure that we're not creating duplicates in the system. So we're going to select ID backend for the company, and then we're going to select ID backend for the individual ID. So I've gone ahead and made a couple of spreadsheets just for this demonstration. The first one I'm going to upload is actually going to be for companies that do not currently exist in our demo account. So I'm just going to show you what that would look like. It's just taking a minute to load. This is our second spreadsheet. All right, well, in that case, maybe not. We'll come back to that. Oh, did it work? Okay, it was just going on its own time today. Here we go. So I've created this spreadsheet here. This company is a completely 100% made up company, and it does not currently exist in our system. So for this one, we actually don't need the individual or firm ID, company ID, because it doesn't exist yet. But if it was already in the system, you would have to download that data and import it into the template and then upload it that way. And I'll show you that in the next step. But since we already have this ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and make sure. So this is saved as a CSV file, which is important. It tells you here that you have to select a CSV. And then we're going to go ahead and import it. And then there are instructions here off to the side. Again, you want to make sure that you read those and make sure that you are filling out everything that you need to fill out. It's pretty extensive, and sometimes it helps to do a Control F to find what you're looking for. Down here, you'll see some check boxes. Now, the one that I'm going to check is disable email mode, because oftentimes whenever you're importing, you may not have all of your email addresses that are required for import. So if you have this unchecked, it's going to give an error when there are missing email addresses. Also, I'm going to keep enable workflow unchecked because by default it's turned off, which is probably a good thing. If you have any workflows set up that could be triggered by new companies or contacts or even updates to companies or contacts, you might get thousands of emails following your upload if you turn that on. So you definitely want to keep that off unless you do want to track it that way. So I'm going to go ahead and import my contacts. So you'll see as it's importing, it will give you a status of how it's going. If there are any errors, you'll actually see that the contacts will be skipped. I don't expect that any would be skipped in this particular instance because we've filled out all of the data, but we'll see sometimes there's a bug. And if there are errors that generate on upload, you can actually download that spreadsheet and cross-reference your data to figure out where you need to fix them. But it will give you the row address of which ones that are messed up. So we'll just give it a few minutes here.
Hey, Courtney, while we're waiting, can I ask one of the questions that was posted in the chat?
Yes.
Okay, Denise asked, do we have much control over the format of our fields? The example she gave was like having it be Alaska instead of AK, where it would automatically fix it. Are you able to change that? Like how much control do you have over the format?
So I believe, so the state field, I believe is set, but I would have to get back to you on that to confirm. But I believe that it does come across as 2-letter. There might be a setting in your administration panel that would allow you to change that, but I would have to definitely get back to you on that one to know for sure. So it does take a little bit of time. In the meantime, I'm going to open up our other spreadsheet here that I've populated. So this one, I've actually, these were already uploaded, and I've highlighted in yellow the people that I'm going to have updates, as well as have highlighted columns that I plan to add. But because these people already exist in the system, I'm going to have to add in the individual ID and the C-firm ID. I've created a report in our in our demo account, which I believe that is the regular account. Just 1 second, please. Here we go. All right, so I've created a couple of reports. The second spreadsheet is the Vance Demolition Company, and this has all the contacts here, and it has my company backend ID and my contact backend ID. And it also has the email address, which I'm going to use as the unique key to cross-reference them together. Let me just double check to see, did that finish? Looks like we have another question. Does the import tool functionality work well in UAT, i.e. can we practice that before we actually importing in production? That is a very good question, Connie. I've never tried it in the UAT environment because we have a demo account, but it couldn't hurt to attempt to do it in UAT to see if it does work. Let's see. Just want to check to see if that import has finished. Almost there. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and open my second spreadsheet.
Hey, Courtney.
Mm-hmm.
Denise also asked, she mentioned that they don't want to collect personal info on their contacts. So are they able to skip having like the home address, home email, etc., like totally off of their options so it isn't so cluttered? Is that a possibility?
Yes, you don't have to include that if you don't want to. So in this spreadsheet here, these are just the company address. There is the option to have additional contact specific addresses. This is usually related to satellite offices, but you don't have to include those other addresses if you don't wish to. All right. Why is it? Sorry, I'm just waiting for my spreadsheet to open. It's going a little slow today. There we go. All right, let me just move this over. So I'm going to go ahead and add this spreadsheet, this worksheet to my demo import, and I'm going to cross-reference the data that's here to match the individual ID and the C-firm ID based on the email. I can get my, I don't know why it's, there it goes. So I'm going to just move or copy the sheet to my other worksheet here, just to save myself some time. So I've gone ahead and moved it here. I'm going to do the index match formula, which if you attended the last webinar, you might recall there was also a tip sheet that kind of explains the syntax of the formula. So let's see, we're going to do index and then the return range of the individual ID, which is the contact. And then we're going to do match, which is the email address. Oops. Go ahead and clean this up here because sometimes adding in that title sheet there can make it confused. So then the lookup array. And then we do the exact match. Interesting. Did it get broken? All right. So sometimes this happens. Index report. Actually, let me just double check to make sure that I was selecting the correct. Okay. right, so I think I'm just getting some technology issues today. Hopefully that. Well, let's see. I'm not really sure why that is not working, but I do know that the company ID is all going to be the same. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy that down because these are all with the same company. So I can go ahead and add that value there. My guess is that it might not be working because I'm doing an exact match and it may have some hidden spacing. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean trim to see if maybe I can fix it that way. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and clean and trim this one over here as well. Oops. All right. And that fixed it. So we do actually have our, it looks like we have one that may be missing, 2, 3, but yes. So there was some hidden spaces or characters before, and that's why it wasn't working. All right, so perfect. So with that, I'm actually going to see if I can figure out why this one did not work. I wonder if it's because of the comma. For the sake of this, just to keep it moving along, I'm just going to go ahead and import as is. I'm going to, because these errors that pop up will actually be a good demonstration of what will happen if something doesn't pull into the system, the notification that you'll receive. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and save this as a CSV file. Oops. I'll save as. All right, we'll save it as a CSV. Oh, go ahead and delete my other worksheet before I do that. All right, so now that I've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and upload to our demo account here. So this one, it says the previous one where we updated where we added the architecture firm was successful. I've gone ahead and created a report to check that. So I'm going to go back to my reports here. Actually, I might actually have it. No, I don't. So the architecture contact report here, and it shows all of the contacts that I just imported. Of course, you want to definitely check your data to make sure it came across correctly. But for this, we're just going to be talking about upload. All right, so I'm going to go back to the marketing module here. I'm going to do add contacts. And for this, I'm actually updating existing content. So I'm just going to do CKC 03 11 21 construction, just to keep it different. We're going to use the backend CRM ID, and then we're also going to use the individual ID. I'm going to select my CSV file. Here it is right there, choose for upload. I'm going to disable the email marketing mode, and then I'm going to go ahead and import. And on this one, I'm expecting there to be some errors. So you can see it's already skipped. Total contacts, or sorry, no, those are the total that it's done. I'm surprised it hasn't skipped yet. Okay, so what this tells me is that we may actually have some duplicates here, because all of those were imported, which is what can happen or can go wrong if you are not careful. So let me get back to my tab here. Okay, so I'm just going to, so we have 73 here. Let me just double check to see what was imported, the count, because we need to make sure. All right, wait for that to open. Oh, here we go. I can see one right here. So before we did not, David Bolin was one of the ones that did not have the ID. So as you can see, because we did not add in that ID, he was duplicated. So that's what's going to happen. You have to make sure that you cross-reference any updates that you have with their backend ID to make sure that it does not create a duplicate value. So I can actually just go ahead and delete that guy from the system later. That's just something to be aware of as you're updating this. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, so in one of the emails for David Bolin, there was a comma before the @ sign.
Yes.
Is how it didn't catch it.
Yeah, so it won't actually tell you when your emails are bad. That is something that in your cleanup and import prep, you'll have to kind of check to make sure that those email addresses are good to use.
Okay, that makes sense.
Any other questions?
There's one from Connie in the chat. I don't know if you were able to read that.
So thank you for walking through the import process. Can you also talk through updating existing company records via the import? I think it requires updating a contact record too. Yes. So the marketing module is basically, its primary function is for if you're doing like email campaigns, right? So you can actually create and update companies through this, but primarily its focus is on contacts. So if you are looking to update companies and contacts, it's going to have to be through the contact record rather than individually as just the company. Do we have any other questions?
I don't think so. Well, thank you, Courtney, so much for going back through any of that. Do you have any last words?
Just make sure that you check out our YouTube page and subscribe. You might win a prize. And there's also, you can review the past videos, including the one that we did earlier this week.
Yes, they're all on YouTube and on our website as recaps with the resources there. I included the link to that Excel best practices and tips that you mentioned earlier. I put that on the chat, but you can find that on our website also. Thank you everybody for being here. We hope you have a great week and join us next month for the April's CRM user group call. Thank you.
Thank you.